Trump's tactics of voter suppression and false claims regarding mail-in ballots appears to be backfiring in quite a few states. So experts say that they have looked into various claims that Trump has made about mail-in voting and looks like he dug his own grave when it comes to certain situations. So for instance, Justin Levitt, who's the Deputy Assistant Attorney General former for Obama, said, if your strategy is based on making it hard for voters to show up, as we know Trump did, the voters who don't show up might be your own. And based on some data, it seems like that is the case. So let's first take a look at the state of Texas. So as we know, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas refused to expand mail-in voting, among other assaults on trying to make it easier for people to vote in the middle of a pandemic. And so what happened as a result of that? Well, Republican counties generally followed the governor's lead and declined to extend new provisions that would make it easier to vote early or to avoid crowds during the pandemic. Now those GOP counties are counting on a massive surge on election day that could create lines and increase waiting times at polls, possibly deterring some voters from sticking around to cast their ballot. So for people who bought into this notion that voting by mail leads to voter fraud and it's not a good way to vote, wait until the actual election day to vote in person. Well, you're likely going to run into giant lines and it's going to be more difficult to vote on actual election day. And so that could backfire on Trump in the state of Texas. Also, when it comes to Democrats, or Democratic voters, I should say, this is an interesting piece of information. So the Democratic stronghold of Harris County, which includes much of Houston, dramatically expanded access to early voting, including a drive-through voting system that has already banked almost 130,000 votes. And if you guys can recall, the GOP in the state of Texas was trying to get those ballots thrown out. Their argument was, well, you can't have drive-through voting. That's only for disabled people, so we got to throw out those ballots. That got challenged multiple times, and federal judges repeatedly declined to give the state GOP what they wanted. So those ballots will in fact count. And also Trump's assault on mail-in voting didn't work on Democrats. So historic early turnout this year has shattered previous records, and early data suggests that Democrats have cast almost twice as many mail-in ballots as Republicans, and that's according to the United States Election Project.
Na 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 na.
Yeah.
Na na na. No.
So we knew that mail-in voting would give Democrats an advantage. But it could have given Republicans an advantage if it weren't for Donald Trump constantly telling people that voting by mail is very bad, not good. So.
All right, so I have 1,000 things to say about this. Number one, that's true. The Republicans used to have an advantage in mail-in ballots. But they also used to have an advantage in senior citizens, and they used to do mail-in ballots more disproportionately as well. Those advantages are gone. The senior citizens they just lost, and Biden now is winning them significantly over Trump. So that's already a devastating sign for the Republican Party overall, and certainly for Trump. But now the mail-in ballot advantage is flipped to massively in favor of Democrats. That was why this election was basically over before it began on election day, at least. There's been 100 million votes cast before election day. It appears that we're going to break certainly any modern record for voter turnout. Now, that's all absolutely certain. Now, let me get into a little bit more speculation on. We're having a live blog for you guys throughout the election day. So tyt.com/liveblog, and you'll see there a tweet from a legislator in Wisconsin saying that in Milwaukee, they think voter turnout is going to top out at 89%. Now, that's so high, I literally can't believe it. But those numbers are not officially in yet. But it gives you a sense of how much voter turnout is different than previous elections. And remember, Trump had to have a perfect storm to win last time by a mere 78,000 votes in a country of 330 million people. And one of the things he had to have in his perfect storm was high voter turnout from unlikely voters on his side, and low voter turnout from everyone on the opposite side. Well, that is not what is happening today. And Republicans always come out to vote. So I'd be very surprised if they didn't have high voter turnout. And MAGA loves Trump. So don't kid yourself into thinking they're gonna have low voter turnout. They probably have high voter turnout. But there's no question that Democrats have high voter turnout, and that's normally a question. So state by state it might vary, but overall, Republicans are in a world of trouble because of that. Now, Anna read you the article from this morning, and already evidence is coming in that it has backfired. So normally in elections, you'll see long lines. You're all used to that. First of all, there shouldn't be any long lines on an election day, because why are we making people wait and making voting difficult? We should make voting easy because we're a democracy. But normally the lines you see are almost always in Democratic areas, because Democrats never ever tilt the scales when they're in charge, but the Republicans tilt the scales massively. You'll see young people in line a lot. Why? Because they limit the number of voting areas in colleges, because they know historically colleges vote more for Democrats. You'll see long lines in urban areas because black folks in this country generally vote for Democrats in overwhelming numbers. So the Republicans will try to limit those when they have control of a state legislature, right? But this time around, Maricopa County, in Republican districts, sorry, 45-minute wait. Why? Well, Trump told all of you to not mail in your votes and go in on day of. So as coronavirus cases are peaking right now in 36 states, they're on the rise, and in 12 states they are setting records today. Trump has all of the Republicans in his version of Jonestown crowding together in really long lines. I mean, that's terrible for the health of America, but it's also terrible for the Republican Party and for Donald Trump. So the chickens are basically coming home to roost. And I want to give you two more things, but Anna, did you want to jump back in?
Yeah, so to your point about coronavirus and how Trump loves to pack people into close quarters. Well, in Iowa, just over the weekend, Trump held a rally where, of course, he was spouting lies about where we really are with this pandemic. And it's relevant because, as you mentioned, Cenk, his supporters really do support everything he does, everything he says. And when he's downplaying this virus, they unfortunately put themselves in risky situations, and they drink the Kool-Aid about how this pandemic is really no big deal. So I want to just show you a quick video of his rally in Iowa and what he had to say, and then I'll tell you what the ramifications of this are.
Many of our greatest companies and labs are coming out very quickly with the vaccines. They're doing great, very shortly, very quickly. It's going to be delivered fast. That will quickly end the pandemic. It's ending anyway. We're rounding the turn, but the vaccine will get it down fast.
So I should note that same day, 1,000 people in Iowa actually got the virus and 700 people were hospitalized. 700 people in one day in one state were hospitalized. And it was, again, on the exact same day that Donald Trump made those statements.
Yeah, and that's a relatively small state, so that's a pretty devastating number for that state. And here we are on election day. Did we round the corner? If we did, we round the corner, ran into a brick wall, because not only are we setting a record for America, this is worse than when the coronavirus pandemic first started and we were all in a panic. It's worse now, but we're also setting records for the world. No one has had more cases in one day or more deaths in one day than America did on Friday. So the only way that we're rounding the corner is that we're finally gonna dump the real plague, which is Donald Trump, and get an actual intelligent person to limit the spread of this pandemic, which this buffoon has not done at all. He's actually made it significantly worse. Now back finally to round up the election issues here, where Trump has made it worse for himself. The Fifth Circuit is maniacally conservative. Recently, they had two decisions that were outrageous. Some detainee that was being held, I say detained prisoner who was being held with no cot and no clothes and had to lay in his own waste for 6 days. And the Fifth Circuit's like, I don't see a problem here. It was so egregious that this really right-wing Supreme Court 7-1 said, oh no, you guys are insane. No, that's not allowed. And there's been a couple other cases like that where the Fifth Circuit is a little bit right of Attila the Hun. And Fifth Circuit was like, No, you're not allowed to vote, to throw away the votes in Texas. No, people did the drive-through votes. You told them they could do it. Well, okay, but what's your legal case? They're like, all we need is anything. Anything will rule in favor of Republicans. I mean, you could have Democrats lay in their own waste for 6 days and we'll say it's awesome, right? So just give me one shred of evidence why we should throw away these votes. And the Republicans lawyers are like, I don't know. So even the Fifth Circuit was like, no, you're not allowed to throw away those votes. That's crazy. So that's how bad his strategy was. In fact, in a New York Times story, they explained Republican legislators would come up to the Trump administration, to Jared Kushner, and say, hey, what's your battle plan for legal maneuvers around claiming victory? That's a wink and a nod to how we're gonna steal this thing, right? And they were surprised to find out they had no plan at all. Of course! Trump is all bluster. Oh, we're gonna stop the count and we're gonna do, you can't count past November 3rd and these mail-in ballots, fraud, crazy. All right, but you gotta give me a legal reason so we can go to courts and stop it. I don't have a legal reason, I don't have any factual evidence. Some of them got dismissed, one of the cases got dismissed on summary judgment. You know what that means? It's a legal term. It means we're not going to trial because you literally have zero evidence. If we believe every single thing you say, you would still lose the case because you haven't presented any evidence at all. The guy has no plan, none whatsoever.
So Cenk, there is a breaking news story that's relevant to what you're saying though, and it gives you a sense of how Trump really did approach voter suppression in a multi-pronged way. And one of those ways, as we've talked about on the show repeatedly, is by weakening the post office during a year where a lot of people are gonna wanna vote by mail. Well, the post office has decided to completely ignore a federal judge's order. So the Washington Post is reporting that the post office has turned down a federal judge's order late Tuesday afternoon to sweep mail processing facilities serving 15 states, saying instead it would stick to its own inspection schedule. The court order came after the agency disclosed that more than 300,000 ballots nationwide could not be traced. So, we don't know. We don't know where the ballots are. A judge wants us to do something. Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and defy that.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you ahead of time, I would be shocked if those 300,000 ballots weren't from predominantly Democratic areas.
Of course.
Oh, golly gee, did we make a mistake in favor of Republicans for the 1,000th time in a row? Oh, I guess that was an accident. So if they are doing anything along those lines, when the new administration comes in, they should investigate that, and if they broke any laws in delaying the mail and trying to affect this election, they should go to prison for a long, long time. This is a democracy, and we're going to insist on it being a democracy and rule of law. Last thing is, in Pennsylvania, because that's his only hope, Trump has to sweep all the swing states and then win Pennsylvania in order to win the election. He has no shot at winning Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Michigan. Those are 10-point leads basically for Biden. His prayer is maybe I can get that Biden lead in Pennsylvania down from 7 or 5 to my side if I don't count, if I delay the mail and they delay the vote and I go into court and I delay things and make them stop counting, etc. So that's why all of his hopes are in Pennsylvania. And today, several different people reaching out and saying that they have family members and friends in Pennsylvania, including poll workers, and they are seeing that Republicans are coming in and exchanging their mail-in ballots for provisional ballots and voting provisionally so they count as day of. Now, since we're getting that report from many different places, it is likely to be true, and it's likely to be a strategy that the Republicans have decided that they're going to use, meaning we get the lead in the third quarter and then we end the game, we don't play the fourth quarter, right? I don't know if that's gonna work. I don't know that they count provisional ballots any quicker than they count mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. So it seems like a Hail Mary, but it's a Hail Mary in the third quarter. You still got a lot of game to play. And that's how desperate they are, because they'd have to hit 10, 12 Hail Marys in a row to win this election. And finally, to just connect it all back to what Anna started with. Trump, in his desperation, did all these maneuvers that he thought might help him win. Oh, don't do the mail-in ballots. Oh, we'll slow down the post office. We'll do this, we'll do that. We'll say we're not gonna count all the votes. And in the end of the day, why did it backfire on him? Because he's deeply incompetent. He has no strategy at all. He can't think to step 2, let alone step 3 or step 4. So what he wound up doing is, in all likelihood, digging himself into an even deeper hole, a hole he likely will not be able to get out of by the end of today.
So quick election update based on our TYT live blog, and you guys should be following it. It's super helpful. So Jocelyn Benson, who's the Secretary of State for Michigan, has tweeted that more than 100,000 of 170,000 absentee ballots in Detroit have already been tabulated. More than 18,000 eligible citizens registered and voted today. And also the vast majority of those 18,000 who registered and voted today were in Detroit, Ann Arbor, and Grand Rapids. Clearly, we don't know who these individuals voted for, but it does seem as though we might get results earlier than we had expected.
Yeah, and guys, I got to tell you, don't go anywhere because you might be shocked at how quickly this election is called. So if Biden wins Florida, it's already instantly over, and Florida already counted all their mail-in ballots. They counted them yesterday. So when their polls close at 8 o'clock Eastern, they might say, hey, here's 2/3 of the vote in, and here's where Florida stands. If Trump wins it, we keep going because Biden has 1,000 different ways to win without Florida. If Biden wins it, it's already over. Trump has no way of winning this election without Florida, let alone North Carolina, let alone what you're hearing about Michigan that Anna just told you. So stay tuned, and this time, the Republicans should brace for impact. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.